Right. 10 questions to ask rejoiners. And this comes from the Daily Mail, where Robert Toombs has written an article dead angry that all of these Ramonas have now become enthusiastic, passionate rejoiners, and a majority of the public feel this way. So he has written a spitting and angry article about how every day they tell us Brexit has failed, defying the facts. And he says, should you corner a rejoiner, or should a rejoiner corner you, then there are 10 questions you should ask, 10 awkward questions you should ask. And so even though the article itself is outright rubbish, nevertheless, I'm loving these 10 questions. So let's go through them quickly. 1, if we rejoin the EU, how much would Britain pay into its budget per year? Well, as far as I'm concerned, as long as it's less than 40 or 50 billion per annum, we're in the money. Because we can already see from analyses that we're losing out on 40 to 50 billion per annum just in tax revenue, thanks to the impacts of Brexit. So for paying in less than that, then we're good, we're sweet. In fact, the real number would be round about what France is paying, which is about 20 billion pounds. Next question. Question number 2. If free movement into the UK from the EU were to be restored, what would annual net migration be? Well, hopefully enough to help fix our NHS, because thanks to the loss of free movement, we lost a lot of core staff that help prop up the NHS, whether it be doctors, nurses, or other staff, and we're suffering from that at the moment. So hopefully enough to restore where we were for having all of those expertise in flux. And it would get all of our citizens extra rights as well. Now, this notion that somehow our immigration has dropped dramatically because of Brexit is also wrong. I mean, we've got immigrants coming in from further afield than the EU. So this correlation between the two is completely wrong, and it comes down to management. And there are lots of other things that you can do on the free movement as well. So that's my answer to that. And immigration is not a bad thing anyway, is it, if it's done right? So number 3, what proportion of global economy and of British trade will the EU represent in 20 years? Well, more than Britain. That's the answer to the question, more than Britain. More than Britain alone, because at the moment, our home market is England, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. And from this home market, we can then send any goods anywhere we want within this home market. And then with this market, we make trade deals around the world. If our home market becomes the EU single market again, maybe even with Ukraine joining, then we've got a bigger home market accounting for a bigger proportion of global trade within which we can send goods anywhere without any paperwork. And then from this bigger market, we can do trade deals with the rest of the world, which the EU is particularly good at doing, because never have I ever heard a British person complain about a trade deal that the EU has done on our behalf, and they've done a good more than 50. Right, question number 4. What would the effect on future trade, what would be the effect of on future trade of abandoning our new closer ties with the growing Pacific region? We don't have closer ties at the moment. That's a bit of a pipe dream. But the answer is zilch. It would have no effect whatsoever. I mean, the cost at the moment is by not being in our home market on the continent. And it's not like we give up trade with the Pacific for it. I mean, while we were in the EU negotiated a free trade deal with Japan, which was so good that we just copy pasted it with a few things missing. So that's a complete no-brainer. Okay, number 5. What would be the economic cost of joining the Eurozone? Now, that's an interesting question, and I'm so glad that he asked this question, because I think that would be a really interesting debate for us to think about the UK currency versus the euro, what it could do. But the presumption that he says in here, another condition of our returning to the EU would be to ditch the pound sterling for the euro. I think he's made a big mistake there. And I think he's made a very common mistake, which is presuming that that is an absolute condition of our returning to the EU. It's not. Legally, strictly legally, if you want to return via Article 49, then it's the members of the club at the moment that determine the conditions for you to go and join the club. So it's a discussion to be had with them. And those conditions aren't set yet. Now, where people get this wrong with regard to the euro is they're thinking about the Copenhagen criteria of 1993, which was 30 years ago, where the EU at that time thought, what are our conditions for these new members that want to join? So they set out the Copenhagen criteria, a completely non-binding guidance document, which they used at the time. But it's completely legally non-binding, and the real legality of it is everything can be negotiated. But nevertheless, I think that would be an interesting debate to be had. Number 6, will the UK rejoin the common fisheries policy? Well, I hope so, for the sake of our fishermen, because right now they're being choked out by not actually having the market of all of our continent available to them without paperwork. So yeah, absolutely, you'd want to rejoin the common fisheries policy. You want to be able to have a say in that, and you might even get a better deal going back in. Because let's face it, when we first went in under Ted Heath, he didn't bother with it. He didn't help out at all. And then when we came out of the EU, I know the fishing community are also furious at the likes of Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson because they were abandoned then. So yeah, for the sake of our fishermen, return to the common fisheries policy and renegotiate. Number 7, as we now have a free trade agreement with the EU, what precisely would be the advantage of rejoining the single market and customs union? Oh God, he actually wrote that. He wrote that, the old fool. Right. First of all, paperwork, because it's a free trade agreement rather than this being our home market. So it would mean that we wouldn't have that paperwork. It would also help for the sake of the Northern Ireland protocol. It would mean that the flow between Great Britain and Northern Ireland would be seamless because it would be the same market. And it would also mean that in terms of doing free trade deals, again, we would be doing it with all of the other nations combined with extra heft and extra weight, because let's face it, the deals that we have done outside the EU by ourselves with New Zealand and Australia have just shafted, according to some conservatives themselves in this area, have shafted our own industries. Whereas all the deals that we did as part of the EU, when we had an input to that and we had more power, I'm not hearing anyone complaining about any of those deals. So that's an advantage of the customs union. Advantage of the single market is all of those flows of money and trade and hiring without barriers again, boosting up our coffers. I mean, that's just such a mad question. Was he just trying to hit 10 and so thought he could throw that one in the middle? Okay, number 8. Would Brussels lawmakers have priority over Parliament? And would the European Court of Justice be superior to British courts? Well, no, Brussels lawmakers wouldn't have priority over Parliament, because our Parliament and our government have always told the Brussels lawmakers what to do. The Commission has always been a servant of the Council, the governments of the European Union. Like, the European Union is all of our countries together, and their governments ask the Commission to do certain things. So no, the Brussels lawmakers, if you will, making laws directed by what the government says. So of course our Parliament sits above that. And all of the European member states always do. And as for the European Court of Justice, again, the European Court of Justice only has oversight on those things that our government have said, well, this is common, this is shared, and so we'd like a shared entity for you to have oversight of. I mean, when it comes to other things that we just want that are exclusively British, then we say, well, we want British courts to have oversight of that. I mean, it's just logical team play of delegation as to what's common and shared and to what you want individually. So yeah, we'd go back to where we were before, which was a really good arrangement with us. And number 10, would Rejoiners commit to a referendum to approve the terms negotiated for a new relationship with the EU? I like how he's thinking now. This is good foresighted stuff of how we should actually go through the final mechanics of getting back into the leadership position within the club. Now, everyone can answer that one for themselves. For me, I think that's probably a good idea, because I think if you have a plan and you want to take the country on that place, you kind of want the population to sign off on it. This is where the Brexiteers themselves gave no respect to that and didn't have a plan for people to vote on. They won by an inch and then decided to take 10 miles, and now the country's unhappy because the country didn't get a say on any of these details. So yeah, there we go. There's your 10 questions. Those are my answers. Make of them what you will. But like I just said, I like where this is going. I like that some of these very angry Brexiteers are now actually thinking about the implications of rejoining, the mechanics of joining, the opportunities of rejoining. Long may this kind of conversation live until we actually do rejoin. Catch you later.